Today, the United States is the world's primary power. It maintains the most lethal military, the largest economy, and dictates the flow of international trade, almost all of which is settled in American dollars. But in 1492, the Americas were entirely absent from the maps of European powers like Portugal. There was only a massive, uncharted ocean where two continents should be. We frequently scrutinize modern nations for expansionist policies, yet we rarely apply that same lens to the historical growth of the United States. How did a remote, colonized landmass engineer a rise to become the primary designer of our global trade and security networks? This trajectory follows a 500-year playbook of strategic, evolving expansionism. The physical expansion began with Christopher Columbus, who sailed west for India in 1492 under the Spanish flag. He never reached Asia, but his mistake in labeling the indigenous population Red Indians created a name that lasted for centuries. This arrival triggered a massive land grab. Britain, France, and Spain carved up the territory, establishing heavily controlled colonial economies designed to feed European wealth. By the mid-1700s, the system reached a breaking point. To pay for the 7 Years' War, Britain imposed severe trade monopolies and heavy taxes on the 13 colonies, effectively forcing them to choose between subservience or rebellion. The resulting American War of Independence was won with decisive French assistance, culminating in the British surrender at Yorktown in 1781. Led by George Washington, the victors drafted the world's first written constitution to codify their new society and establish a centralized federal authority. Winning independence did not halt the march across the continent. It simply transferred the right to conquer from European monarchs to the newly minted Americans. Almost immediately, the young nation pivoted westward, adopting a deliberate strategy to aggressively multiply its physical territory. In 1803, the government purchased the Louisiana Territory from France, tripling the nation's landmass overnight. The expansion continued through conflict. By 1845, defeating Mexico pushed the borders to their modern limits, completing the coast-to-coast map. This rapid agricultural growth relied on a brutal economic engine, the systemic use of enslaved African labor. In the South, human lives were turned into capital to fuel the global cotton trade. This reliance on slavery created a deep economic divide between the industrializing North and the agrarian South, eventually erupting into a civil war that threatened to dissolve the Union entirely. President Abraham Lincoln moved to abolish the slave system, an act that led to his assassination. While legal slavery ended, the racial scars from this era remain a central tension in American society today. Resolving this internal conflict between two incompatible economic systems consolidated the United States into a single, massive industrial market, ready for global competition. It leveraged a unique geopolitical advantage. Being surrounded by vast oceans and weaker nations made it an untouchable fortress. This isolation protected the American mainland from the infrastructure destruction that leveled Europe and Asia during both world wars. The attack on Pearl Harbor finally forced the U.S. to project its military power across the globe, ending its period of defensive isolationism. Because its own factories and cities remained intact, while the rest of the industrial world lay in ruins, America emerged from 1945 as a singular global giant. After 1945, the strategy changed. America stopped seeking to expand its physical borders and began expanding its global systems. It created international institutions to cement control, NATO for military influence, and the IMF and World Bank to anchor global finance to American interests. This ushered in an era of interventionism, where the U.S. inserts itself into the internal affairs of foreign nations to maintain its global architecture without claiming new land. Today, China is the first modern power to seriously challenge this established order, using aggressive trade strategies to build a rival sphere of influence. The challenge now is whether this centuries-old expansionist playbook is enough to defend the current order against a rival playing by the same rules.